Welcome to today's episode of Falling to Freedom, where addiction ends and faith begins, the weekly podcast that brings thoughtful, informed, and challenging discussions about addiction to the forefront of everyone's minds. We join our host now, Chad LaComb, for today's topic.
All right, well, welcome. Today in the studio, we have Tim Torres joining us. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you in. And today's topic is going to be prescription drugs. So this is one of those things that, maybe sometimes people think is totally okay because a doctor prescribes it. And it can be. There's a lot of good uses for prescription drugs. A lot of times people that are in pain need something to help with the pain. But I think any serious discussion about addiction and the effects of it on society and people's lives, would be falling short if we didn't include prescription drugs. It's a huge part. I have a little statistic I just wanted to read. It's probably not going to take you by surprise. It says every year, over 16 million Americans over the age of 12 misuse prescription drugs, mostly opioids, fueling a crisis so deadly that in 2022 alone, they drove over 75% of the 108,000 overdose nationwide. So 108,000 overdose in 2022, and 75% of those were from prescription overdoses, mainly opioids. And this is according to the CDC and National Center for Drug Abuse statistics. I mean, it's a huge problem.
Yes, it is.
Prescription drugs. Often when people think about addiction, they're thinking, heroin, cocaine, they're thinking methamphetamine, these types of drugs. And people often don't realize that prescription drugs is a big part of that. Not only an addiction in itself, but as a gateway or a path to harder drugs. And so I know this is, a big part of your story. So I was hoping you would just kind of share with the listeners, your journey, your experience, and the dangers of prescription drugs.
Yeah, I'd love to. My drug use started out when I was like 7th grade. I started smoking weed and drinking alcohol, and
that seems to be a common theme.
Yes, that is the gateway usually, right? Yes.
Even though they legalize marijuana and say it's okay, it's like, in my experience, sorry to cut you off a little bit, but in my experience, it's like not everybody that smokes pot goes on to doing other drugs, but everybody that goes on to do other drugs started with smoking pot. Yeah, so it's like there's definitely a connection.
I agree.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
When I was a sophomore in high school, I was probably 16, 17 years old. I was in a motorbiking accident. It was a little GoPed motorized scooter, and I was going down a hill and I crashed and I tore my ACL. And the doctors immediately prescribed me to Norcos. It's a kind of opiate. It's a little bit stronger than Vicodin. I was in a lot of pain. My knee had swelled up to 2 times its normal size, and they wanted to do surgery right away, but they put it off because of the swelling. And I was in a cast.
Is Norcos, for people that don't know, is that something that doctors typically prescribe?
It's a doctor-prescribed painkiller for moderate to severe pain. It has 10 milligrams of hydrocodone and 325 milligrams of acetaminophen. Okay. So it's I would say
Tylenol, right?
Yeah, Tylenol and a narcotic, which is hydrocodone.
Okay.
They prescribed me to that, and they put off surgery for the time being because my leg was so swollen. And so they put me in a full leg cast. It was immobilized, and they kept me on painkillers for a good 6 months. They would refill my prescription every 30 days, and at first it was fine. I was in a lot of pain, so I was taking them, and shortly, I'd say within 2-3 weeks, I noticed that it makes you feel good as well. It wasn't only taking them for pain, I started taking them for pleasure. And
within 3 weeks of taking them, you
yes.
started, or you were already feeling yourself transition from taking them to manage pain to taking them to get high?
Yes.
Wow.
The pain kind of started to subside. The swelling went down, but I still had this big, huge bottle of pills, and the doctors were telling me take 1 to 2 tablets every 4 to 6 hours and for pain. And it didn't take long for me to realize that they feel good as well.
Just on that, topic, because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there and people that, have legitimate reasons to take painkillers, but, probably don't want to get in a situation where they're abusing them. Did you know at some point that, I probably don't need to be taking these anymore?
I knew in the back of my head that the prescription that I had, this full bottle of opiates and the extended, they were going to keep refilling my prescription as long as I would ask for it, until I had my surgery, because I still had the torn ACL. It didn't go away. It's not something that goes away on its own. It needs surgery to repair. And they put off the surgery for a long time. I knew that I probably didn't need the pills, but I enjoyed taking them. And so I continued to take them. And not long after that, maybe within 2-3 months, I started running out before my prescription was able to get refilled.
So you were taking more than what they were recommending? Yes.
You build a tolerance very quick to opiates. Instead of taking 1 to 2 tablets, I'd take 3 tablets, and it slowly progressed, and it happened before I could even realize how many I was taking, but I was abusing them within, I'd say, 2 to 3 months after getting my first prescriptions. The doctors would keep on prescribing every month, and I remember running out, and I don't remember feeling sick at that point, but I remember not feeling very uneasy and not being able to sleep very well when I did run out. And it would be a tough few days until I got my prescription refilled.
When you say a tough few days, is it by this time, is there like a physical addiction as well? Or?
I believe there was a physical addiction because, I would get night sweats, and it'd be hard to eat. I didn't really know anything about drug abuse or anything back then. I knew it was probably bad that I was doing it, but I didn't know anything about detoxing or physical dependency or anything like that.
This is within 3 months?
Yes, 3 months.
3 months, you're already developing a physical addiction to the opioids.
And abusing them. And yes, I stayed like that for, I'd say, 6 to 8 months. And then I got in another accident. Long story short, I got hit by a car and ran over on both ankles. I broke my heel, and they had to do a bunch of stitches and staples to put my foot back together. And so I got prescribed more painkillers at that point, stronger ones. I was getting 10 milligram Percocet at that time, and the prescriptions just kept coming. After a while, the doctors decided that they didn't want to keep refilling them. There was a liability probably with that. And I was still young. I was maybe 16, 17 years old. And so they decided to start weaning me off. And not long after that, I started looking to the street for drugs. I would buy Norcos off my friends, other people that had them. I would go to the street and try to find them. Because I wasn't able to get them from the doctor anymore. Right around that time, OxyContin became popular. And so I knew people and friends at school and stuff that had OxyContin.
That's an opioid as well?
It's a very strong opioid. Okay. No Tylenol in those. It's all oxycodone. And we were getting 80 milligram oxycodone, and I would just take them just like I was taking the Norcos. And
so you were taking 10 milligram Norcos, which had acetaminophen in them. Now you're taking 80 milligram oxycodone.
And instead of taking the whole pill at once, we would break it up, cut them in half, cut them in quarters. And before long, your tolerance builds up fast to these things. And before long, I was snorting them. And when that didn't work...
I've heard that before, and I'm just curious, like, what's the motivation to go from just taking a pill to crushing it and snorting it?
The instant high.
So it gets into your system quicker.
Yes. They have a time release coating on the outside of them.
Yeah.
So first we would take the time release coating off and then cut them into fours, take them that way. But before long, I was full-blown snorting them.
Yeah.
And I'd need more than one a day. Wow. Sometimes 2, 3 a day. That's a lot of opiates for... by this time I'm probably 18 years old.
Do you think the doctors when they started to wean you off those things, I mean, they knew it was like a problem of abuse at that point. I mean, you're asking for so many of them and stuff that
I'm sure
it had to have like dawned on them. This is not a good thing.
Yes, I'm sure. I was also doctor shopping, so I would go from the emergency room and tell them that I was hurt, and then I would go to another doctor and then go to my primary care doctor. I was going to multiple doctors. I'm sure it wasn't long before they put a red flag up or something saying, no more opiates for this kid. I remember I was probably 18, 19 years old. I went to the doctor with my mom, and they said, we're going to prescribe you to methadone tablets. And so they prescribed me those, and at the time I just threw them away or sold them or something. I wasn't interested in that.
And what's methadone?
It's a synthetic opioid that's supposed to, instead of taking an opiate, you're supposed to take methadone, and it keeps you from getting sick. It's something that is just it's like another opiate.
But intended to wean you off of the opiates?
I think that's why they originally prescribed them to me. But at that point, I wasn't interested in them, and I either sold them or gave them away or something, and continued to use my normal Norco or OxyContin, whatever I was getting at that time. Not long after that, I had a shoulder injury, and at that point, I had shoulder surgery. And since I had shoulder surgery, the doctors did prescribe me back to Norcos. So I was on another prescribed opiate, but I remember at that time they didn't even work. I had been so far along in my addiction that they didn't work, so I would just sell them and then buy more OxyContin. And that went on for a couple years, and then I remember they stopped making OxyContin, or they stopped giving it out as freely, and I was very sick in my apartment at the time. Sick, I mean physical withdrawals. By that time, if I didn't have opiates, I would be ill.
Your body was physically dependent on them.
Completely physically dependent. I had been on opiates for years at that point. So if I didn't have them, I couldn't function. I would, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, severe pain, because when you're taking opiates and painkillers for that long, when you don't have them, you feel every single ache and pain there is. And I was physically sick, and I remember one of my friends, Josh, asked me if I wanted to try heroin, and I was sick at that point to the level where I just wanted it to go away. I'd been sick for a few days, and I agreed, and that's the first time I ever used a needle, and the first time I ever tried heroin.
And that's an opiate as well, right?
It's an opiate. It's probably the strongest opiate they have besides fentanyl. At that time, fentanyl wasn't even a thing. It was just heroin, and that progressed my drug addiction very far.
Did you ever think for a minute when you started taking them for your injuries that one day you'd be shooting heroin?
No, definitely not. I remember, hearing about heroin or seeing people that were on it and just being grossed out and like, no way I would ever do that. I couldn't see that happening at all.
Yeah.
And
I think that's pretty typical.
Yeah.
That was my experience as well. Like the things that I ended up doing, I never even imagined that I would do those things when I started. I mean, it's like you go down this progression, down this hole, and the things that at one point seem impossible become possible.
Yes.
I think people need to understand that, right? And realize that, because you hear a lot of times, well, I'd never do that.
Yeah.
I might use a little bit of this over here or that, or even prescription drugs, but I would never let it get to that. Well, that's the same thing every single person that eventually finds himself in that place thought.
Yeah, when you're sick, when you have the withdrawal symptoms, you'll do anything to get that to go away.
Yeah.
For years, I was sick of being strung out. I didn't want to be strung out anymore, and there was I just couldn't escape it. I couldn't get out of it. My heroin addiction lasted years. I continued to use. I would steal. I would do anything I could to get it.
Were you thieving before that?
No.
So it was directly related to your addiction.
Yes.
The thieving was to pay for your addiction, essentially.
Yes. I had, at the start of my addiction, when I was taking Norcos and when I was taking OxyContin, I had a construction job. I had a full-time job. I was going to work, and it didn't take long before your addiction takes priority over work. And you start to miss work because you ran out of pills or you ran out of drugs. And when I lost my job, that's when the heroin addiction started. It's full blown.
That became your new job.
That was my new job. And robbing, stealing, and doing anything I could to get the drug was my new life.
That's a very common situation. We're anticipating in the future having, multiple different guests to talk about the intersection between crime and addiction because they're correlated.
Yes.
I mean, just like you said, a lot of times the things that people do, the crimes that they commit are because of their addiction. So
my heroin addiction lasted years. I couldn't see the light of day. I just wanted to do. I didn't even want to do drugs at the time anymore. I just wanted to get clean, and I couldn't. And finally, it took me going to a methadone clinic, and that's how I finally was able to break the habit. I was sick of stealing, going to jail, catching all these theft charges, and it was ruining my life, and I wanted a way out of it. And I had heard through the grapevine that there was this program where you could go on methadone, which is another opiate, but it was prescribed by the doctor, and they would start you off at a high dose, and then the goal was to wean you down slowly. And
when you say a program, is this like a state?
Yeah, it's a state-funded program.
State-funded program.
By that time, I had lost everything. I was on, Medi-Cal, so I qualified for the program. I hadn't worked in years, and that seemed like the only way to get out of it. I wouldn't recommend everybody that's going through this to go on the methadone program. It was very hard to get off. They start you off on a very high dose, and you're supposed to wean down on your own account. Like, you're supposed to tell them, I'm ready to go step down. And a lot of people never do. I know people that are still in the methadone program 10 years later.
So what, they'd get you addicted to a different drug and then try and, in a controlled way, wean you off it?
Yeah, they consider it a safer drug because you're taking the same amount each day. They won't just raise your dose. They'll start you off at like 120 milligrams, and it's up to you to tell them to come down. They probably want you to stay on it. It's a state-funded program.
I remember having conversations with guys that were heroin addicts, and they said they would be on the methadone program and still shoot heroin.
Oh yeah, you can definitely do that.
They would be doing both.
A lot of times people just use it to not be ill, to not have the withdrawal symptoms. So, they'll do their drugs, and then when they run out, they'll go to the methadone program. But I really wanted to get clean. I was tired of the lifestyle. I knew I wasn't going anywhere. I was just going to either stay addicted to heroin or start to get off. During the last part of my use of actual heroin, fentanyl got introduced, and I lost a lot of friends to fentanyl overdoses. And I was starting.
What year was that?
That was probably 2014, 2015.
Wow. Okay. So fentanyl's been around that long.
Yeah. They introduced it as China White. They were telling people that it was high-grade heroin, but it's a synthetic opiate as well that's very strong. It's probably, they say it's like 100 times stronger than morphine.
Do you agree with that?
Yes. I lost a lot of friends from it. I died myself a few times from it.
Really?
I woke up in hospital rooms not knowing how I got there, and the doctor would tell me, they found you face down in front of a Jack-in-the-Box. It happened 2 or 3 times.
Wow. Yeah, it's in the news a lot right now. I mean, it's on the, news programs and forefront of everybody's minds, that it's a serious epidemic. I know the current administration has made it a priority to stop the flow of it into this country and hopefully get behind supporting programs to get people off that garbage. So
it's a strong drug. They have another drug that combats your overdose called Narcan. That's the actual brand name of it. There's other brands, but Narcan is supposed to bring you back from an overdose. And when you're on fentanyl, they'll have to give it to you maybe 3-4 times before you come back with it. With heroin, they'll give it to you once and you'll snap right out of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So with heroin, I never overdosed, but as soon as fentanyl came around, I remember 2, maybe 3. It's been such a long time, maybe 3 overdoses where I woke up in hospital rooms and didn't know how I got there, and some scary stuff. Jumping forward, when I was on the methadone program, I started off on 120 milligrams, and with the help of God, I was able to wean myself all the way down to 1 milligram, and then I stopped going completely. It took about a year to get from 120 milligrams down to 1 milligram.
Wow.
And that was the way, with God and with methadone, is the only way I was able to break that addiction.
And yet you say you wouldn't encourage people to go down the methadone path just because of the risks involved and the addiction on that.
If there's a way to get off of it without methadone, I strongly encourage that, because with methadone, it's a strong addiction itself, and it's designed to keep you on for an extended amount of time. The only way I was able to wean down is with God. There's no way I could have done it on my own behalf. I know people, like I said, that are still on it, and a lot of people that are still on it today. It's pretty much a lifelong program. It's either you put in the work and you wean yourself down, or they'll keep you on as long as you need to be on. It's not designed to be like a short fix. So if there's a way to get away from your opiate addiction without going on methadone, I would recommend that.
So, Tim, it's extremely likely that there's going to be people that are watching this podcast that are experiencing maybe the initial stages of prescription drug addiction. Maybe they're down the road a little bit and they've already progressed to where they're feeling the physical effects of it, or maybe they've gone so far that they're in a full-blown heroin addiction right now. Just curious what you would suggest to those people, having gone through it yourself, to a way to get out of it.
I would recommend that you reach out to somebody, maybe reach out to a loved one, maybe reach out to your doctor and let them know what's going on. Asking somebody for help, because you can't do it by yourself. It's a very hard thing to overcome. And if I would have been open and honest about my addiction and maybe reached out to a family member, or, for a long time, my family tried to help me, but I had progressed so far that they felt like they were helpless. I'm sure I wasn't easy to be around, but if you're in the beginning stages, I would recommend reaching out, maybe especially to your doctor, and letting them know, hey, I'm having these problems, and maybe they can wean you off at a gradual level where you won't have bad withdrawal symptoms or something. Maybe there's another prescription that they can give you that's not as strong as methadone, not as much of a lifelong thing as methadone.
Okay. What advice would you give someone that has experienced an injury and needs to take some type of painkiller to deal with the pain? Maybe they are kind of aware that maybe they have an addictive personality. They have a tendency to take things to the extreme, and they're concerned that they might abuse something like that, or maybe they don't think it's an issue at all. What advice would you give someone that, has a legitimate reason to take them for an injury?
I would recommend first asking the doctor if there's any non-narcotic option. There's strong pain relievers that don't have opiates in them. Toradol, there's 800 milligram Motrin. There's other ways around pain than taking opiates.
Okay.
Opiates are dangerous also because when you do have an injury, it masks the pain to the point where you can re-injure yourself. So, if you're not maybe babying your injury as much as you should be because you don't feel anything, you feel high. So First of all, I'd recommend asking for a non-narcotic pain reliever. The second thing I'd recommend is if it's a parent has a child that's injured or a young teen, I would recommend that you hold that bottle of pills and you relinquish them maybe less than the doctor recommends. The doctor used to recommend me to take 1 to 2 every 2 to 4 hours. Sometimes it was 4 to 6 hours. It depends on what they prescribe you and how severe your pain is. But they also tell you that you should take a pill before you're in excruciating pain so that it doesn't pass that pain threshold. And that's dangerous advice. If you're not in pain, you shouldn't be taking a painkiller. I think that's probably what contributed to my addiction. I wouldn't have felt that high from it if I was taking them only when I had pain and maybe only taking one instead of taking 2. So I would recommend the parent hold on to that bottle of pills and give them out as needed for pain, maybe not to the extent that the doctor recommends.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like a recurring theme in some of the things that you've said, where maybe the doctor doesn't have an ill intention. I don't think the doctor has an ill intention, but they don't know the people. They're just, maybe trying to do what their training told them or what the recommendation from the drug company. But it sounds like you need to, you as the person taking those prescription drugs, it's your life, it's your body, and you need to take control of that. Despite the doctor telling you to take 2 every 4 hours, if you don't need 2 every 4 hours, probably a good idea not to take 2 every 4 hours.
Yes.
Just take what you need. And I like the suggestion, at least for minors, let parents hold on to those.
Yeah, don't just trust your kid to take them, because there's a chance that they're going to take them as recommended, and it can lead to an addiction very, very fast. Yeah. It surprised me how fast. I really didn't realize how deep I was in until maybe a year after I started taking them and started feeling the withdrawal symptoms. And it caught me off guard.
There's a lot of debate over the so-called gateway drugs. Would you consider prescription drugs to be a gateway drug?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think there's a lot of drugs that can be gateway drugs in the sense that you take them, maybe they're socially acceptable, don't have as big a consequences physically, mentally on your body, but what they do is lower your inhibitions. They start to soften your resolve in things, and eventually, like we discussed in the beginning, you find yourself doing things that you never thought were possible before. So why don't you share a little bit about what's going on in your life now? I mean, the thing about it is, with addiction, is you don't have to stay there.
Yes.
Right? And as much damage as addiction can do in a person's life, there's hope on the other side.
There is.
And if a person, can get free from that, then anything's possible.
Yes.
And I think your story is one of hope, is one of success, because you're obviously not in that addiction anymore. And I just thought you could just share with the listeners, what kind of things are going on in your life right now.
Well, today I'm married. We have 2 kids. Life is good. It took me a long time to get out of the cycle. And even after I was off methadone, I still, I was smoking marijuana. I was drinking. I didn't fully surrender my life to God until about a year ago. And once I did, everything changed. My wife was always into the Word. She's always been a very, very spiritual person. I always admired her walk with Christ. And about a year ago, I saw her start to give up. She wasn't reading her Bible anymore, and I just noticed that she was losing her happiness. She didn't seem full of life anymore. And when I saw that, I told her, I'm done with this. I'll stop smoking weed. I'll stop drinking. I want to do this with you. I want to give my life to Christ, and I want to walk with him. And ever since I did that, my life's transformed. I started my own business. I do heating and air conditioning.
Okay.
Yeah,
what's the name of your company?
Upgrade HVAC, Upgrade Heating and Cooling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
We started our own company. Ever since I dedicated my life to Christ, I'd say my life's done 100% different.
Wow.
Like I said, after the methadone, for years after, I was happy that I was off the opiates, but I still dabbled, and I still wasn't fixed. And I'm still fixing myself. I'm still getting fixed now. I'm not 100% healed, but I devoted my life to Christ, and I'm 100% clean, and that's good enough for me right now.
That's great. And how long has it been?
It's been a year.
Okay. Well, Tim, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being open and honest and sharing, your own struggles. I know that a lot of times with addiction, there's guilt and there's shame associated with it. So people, certainly that are in the midst of it, they don't like to talk about it. So, I just appreciate you coming on today and being open and honest. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you for being a part of this much-needed conversation as we expose the raw truths about addiction. Don't forget to like, follow, and most importantly, share. Remember, addiction is the dirty little secret that every family deals with, but nobody wants to talk about.